And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another installment of my ongoing series about my retro emulation journey. This is video 15 and this is a relatively short video focused exclusively on the Logitech G Cloud device, which I own, and I have mixed feelings about it, quite sharply mixed in fact. I absolutely love the feel of it, but I've got some reservations about how it actually works and the power to cost ratio. That said, before we dive into it, this series is going to be a guide of stuff like this. It's just little overviews of little bits and stuff that I learned on my specific unique journey. Not a lot of people have a G Cloud, not a lot of people care about a G Cloud. But what I'm going to do in these videos, I'm showing you how I fucked around and found out and learnt about emulation. And one of the stages that was quite important for me was buying this Logitech G Cloud and my thoughts about it. What we're going to see in the rest of the video is a bit of an overview of the G Cloud and how it works and how I use it, and just some general stuff about it, and then some stuff about the case that I bought and how I use that. And then I'm going to wrap up just by talking about my general thoughts and why I have got some slightly mixed thoughts about the G Cloud. If you are more interested in it, I strongly recommend the videos on channels like Retro Gamecore and Wolf Den about the Logitech, because they do much better deep dives than me with better lighting and better sound and so on. But with no further ado, we're going to be diving into it. And as always, please remember there won't be any links to any ROM sites at all in this series. So yeah, let's just dive into an overview of the Logitech G Cloud.
And hello, as promised, we're going to be looking at my Logitech G Cloud. This is my G Cloud, and all I can say is this is a fantastic bit of hardware. It is comfy, it is slick, it is so slim, it is light, it feels sturdy. The amount of screen surface area to the hard real estate around it is just an amazing ratio. It just feels good in the hand. Every aspect of this is just brilliant. Zooming in and out there. Other than the D-pad, which isn't fantastic, but other than that, this is all just such a wonderful ergonomic device. I purchased it in the UK, and it was a bit of a hassle buying it because I actually got it just before it was officially announced in the UK, and the website itself was incredibly unhelpful. So I ended up getting it shipped over from the States because there was no indication of when it was going to get announced in the UK, when it was going to get released, and so on. But I have it now. It's great. I'll have another short video in a second as a second part of this, of talking about the Logitech G Cloud case, which isn't still available in the UK, is exclusive to America. But yeah, I'll show you how this works. So this is just some artwork I have on here, and this is the Logitech itself. You'll notice it makes everything around it go kind of dark on my camera setting because it's such a bright screen. But that's fine. You've seen the console itself. So basically, I set this up with Daijisho. Daijisho is a front end much like RetroArch or Batocera. To set it up, you don't have to link it to your Gmail, but it does help if you do. In that sense, it's a lot like the Retroid Pocket Launcher. In terms of setting it up, I found once I set it up on Gmail, let me just go over. Just looking here at the apps, the ones that I had to buy and that were worth buying were Drastic, PPSSPP Gold, and then PSX Play, which is a streaming app for the PS4. You'll see the other apps I have here. There's Ether SX, which hopefully you're familiar with now. Dolphin, of course. DuckStation, Flycast. I installed Moonlight, RetroArch, Yaba Sanshiro, M64 Plus, and so on. And there's also a few games that I installed in here. As this is an Android device, I did install Streets of Rage, Shredder's Revenge, Plants vs. Zombies 2, and a Final Fantasy game, all of which are Android exclusives, and there's no other way I could play them because I don't have any of the Android devices. Yeah, so these are the apps that I have here. To toggle through the various menus, you just use the right bumper and trigger respectively. So using the right bumper takes us back over to the library. In terms of the ROM setup I have here, I think the thing to point out is, of the ROMs that I have here, I don't have all my ROMs on here. This is only a 512 gig memory card, and what I put on here, I decided it was just going to be my sort of favorite ROMs. So in terms of the ROM library I've shown you previously, consider this to be the AAA ROM. So if you look here, Sega Genesis, I've only got 65 of my 300 odd or 400 odd Genesis ROMs. So in terms of that, these are the ROMs that I have. So these are my favorite Mega Drive games. Similarly, if we look at something like MAME, I've only got 19 MAME games on here. Master System, I've got my favorite Master System games. N64, I've got my favorite Nintendo 64 games, and so on and so forth. So rather than being specifically, oh, this is for my PS2 games, or this is for Tier A, or this is like a Steam Deck build type thing, what I've done with the Logitech is I've just been putting on the games that are my favorite games. So for my ROM library, that would be my Elite tier or my Triple A kind of distinction. So only 23 Nintendo DS games, for example. For PlayStation 2, I put 228 games on here because actually what I did with PS2 is I put all my PS2 games on here, mainly because I got overexcited. At the time, I only had 228 PS2 games. Now I have about 300 or so. And to be honest, of all these, a lot of these are not the sort of games that I would or should have actually put on here. Um, as you may know from my ROM library video, I'm actually splitting up my PS2 games into what I call AAA and not AAA. And a lot of the games on this device are the not AAA ones, which was kind of a mistake. I basically dumped everything on here before I'd actually gone through them. One of the things that I do need to do is go through my my G Cloud, remove quite a lot of games, and then load it up with just the refined games I want. So, for example, if we look here, I definitely don't need Seven Blades on here, or Seven Sins, or All Star Fighters. And in fact, I found out when I was tweaking on my Steam Deck configurations that my version of Alter Echo was the wrong language. So this is actually a French version, and I need to replace it with what I now have, which is an English language version. So just things like that. Essentially, I guess what I'm saying is this is halfway configured, and as a result, I need to really reconfigure it pretty substantially. Sorry, I keep on doing that. So something with the PSP, and there's even GameCube and stuff on here. Where is GameCube? There it is. So there's even GameCube and stuff on here. And what I really want to do is kind of go through this. And actually, there's a lot of games on this that I just, I wouldn't play on this particular device now that I have a Steam Deck. But that said, I did set this up before I even bought a Steam Deck. I set this up before I even thought I was going to buy a Steam Deck. So I don't think I can really be blamed for that. The one thing I think I would say about this, which I think is the only other thing worth mentioning, and it is mentioned on lots of videos and reviews, is that this device uses FAT32 formatting processing for the SD card. And what that means is when you put your SD card in here, if a ROM is larger than 4 gig in size, you can't fit it on the SD card. Now, that doesn't really affect a huge number of games. But for example, here on the GameCube, I think it affects the Metal Gear Twin Snakes game, which you'll see is on here. And then similarly on some of the other games. So for example, on Wii, I think the game The Last Story, which I have on here, is too large. Do I have The Last Story on here? I don't. Right, I must have taken it off for exactly this reason, because games that are larger than 4 gig can only live on the internal memory of the device, and the device only has an internal 32 gig of memory on the G Cloud. So to be honest, that is quite a frustrating feature, or at least it was originally when I planned on having this as my sole dedicated device. Now that I plan on using my Steam Deck for lots of things as well, then the fact that I have this is like just a nice bonus. And whilst I originally bought it because I was overexcited, and then I got a little bit depressed and thought this was a bad purchase, and now actually this is a nice little extra within my handheld device library. Yeah, that's the G Cloud. I do love it, but I hardly ever use it, to be honest. It's a great device. It feels great. Setting it up was a lot of fun. It allows me to play Android games as well on the go. And yeah, functionally, I just wanted to show that to you. What I'm going to cut to next is going to be a video on purchasing the right case for this device, which was a lot harder than it might sound.
Well, hello YouTube. So this is a quick bit that I'm going to film. I have no idea what sequence I'm going to film all these things in and how I'm going to edit all back together, because Emulation was never really a planned video series on my channel. But what I want to talk about today is specifically this, and specifically this case.
This is a case which is called the SOCO case, and it's specifically for my Logitech G Cloud. I may have already spent some time with this channel whinging about how difficult it was to get a G Cloud in the UK. At the time that I wanted one, it was only available in the States, and it hadn't been released in the UK, and I had to eventually order it off eBay, which was just a hassle. This is the case that I could get for it. It didn't actually come with it. It didn't come with anything at all. And this case was from Amazon. Amazon ironically sell cases for the G Cloud, but at the time the G Cloud wasn't out in the UK. So I got this case, and as you'll see, the G Cloud fits inside it. There we have it. It's got these little bits here. This is something I made myself because, hang on, let me just take this out and show you. If you just have it as a thing, this is the case, and then it's got a big gap here to put in like chargers and SD cards or whatever else you might want. And what I found is that it was actually quite useless and cumbersome to try to get it out. You had to kind of like dig your fingers in the side and mess around, or just tip it out upside down, which is horrific. So what I did is I actually specifically made this. And where is this? Oh, here we are. And what I did with this is, if you pull this, it just lifts it up, and then you can just grab your Logitech. So that was my improvement to the case. But having said that, wasn't a massive fan of the case. I don't understand what this flap here is for. You can see here where I've stuck in this this bit. Yeah, not a massive fan of the case. It's huge. Look at that. It's massive, and the Logitech is so thin. It's so thin. That's ridiculous. So I've been looking for a much better case for quite some time. At which point, finally, in the States, Logitech released an official case, but they didn't release it in the UK. I ordered it from Amazon.ca, so Canadian Amazon. This is the case. It comes with a little tassel, a little carabiner. It's got a handle, little Logitech logo. Pop it open. It's extremely minimalist. So if you're popping your Logitech in there, that's fine. Getting it out is actually very easy because it just opens up right here. It's like it's just the right height to just pop out. That's not a problem. So that's that problem solved. But the real beauty of this, and the reason I wanted it so badly, and why I like it so much, is look at this. God damn, just look at that. Look at that. Let's compare these two cases. I mean, can you tell the difference here? Is this coming across? Like, oh my god, it is a fraction of the size. It's about half as tall. And it's just so slick, and it's just so comfy in the hand. Look at that. Look at that, compared to this like, Goliath of a case, which is insanely large. So, long story short, this is what I now have. I have a Logitech G Cloud case from Canada, perfect for my G Cloud. I am loving it. This is ergonomically my favorite handheld console. This is ergonomically one of my favorite cases. Highly recommended.
And here we are coming to the end of the video. So the two sections you've just seen, one was an overview of the G Cloud and a quick bit of me just gushing about the ergonomics and how nice it is, and then showing you the Dai Show front end. And the second part was talking about the case and the peripherals you can get for it and some of the difficulties, especially in the UK, that I've had getting these things. What I want to do now to just kind of just overly summarize how I feel about the G Cloud, and just take a couple of minutes to talk to you about how I feel about it, because buying the G Cloud was one of the things that has taught me, with some embarrassment and reluctance, that I really should do more research into the devices I buy before I buy them, because the truth is the G Cloud doesn't really occupy much of a place within my personal gaming use case scenarios. I have my Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, which is great for all retro games. The user interface is great, the front end is great, the emulation is really powerful. It's so light, it's so portable, it's fantastic. And then at the other end, I have my Steam Deck, which I'm going to be showing over the next two videos. I'll be doing really lengthy deep dives into my Steam Deck. Don't want to do too much because there are literally hundreds of thousands of videos on YouTube about Steam Decks, but I just wanted to give my perspective. And Steam Decks is for that bigger, chunkier, more powerful set of builds and emulation with a really great front end in Batasera, which runs in Windows. Um, but yeah, basically, the G Cloud occupies this like weird little middle area. I bought it before I really had committed to the idea of buying a Steam Deck, and I was hoping it was going to be my my retro gaming device and my emulation handheld for every single use case scenario, which actually it hasn't been by a pretty large margin. And the thing about the G Cloud is the well, as I mentioned, the ergonomics, the build, the feel of it is absolutely fantastic, barring the D-pad, which is a little bit clunky, and the Retro Game Core video goes into that in some detail as well. But putting ergonomics to one side, the user interface, so the normal sort of Logitech app-based home screen in the Android part of it, is a little bit clunky and annoying, and it has like irritating bits of bloatware I can't get rid of. So the most recent update put a Fortnite tab on there you can't delete, and a Call of Duty Black Ops 6 tab on there that you can't delete. I mean, I don't mind Black Ops, but I don't want a permanent tab on my G Cloud. In addition, once you go into Daijisho is good, but it hasn't been updated in about a year. When I initially installed it, it was like the primo Android front end, but now actually it is showing some rough edges and some bits that aren't quite really very effective, like when you're deleting ROMs or rescraping or things like that. And so that's a little bit annoying. And in addition, a G Cloud isn't actually that powerful. It plays up to and including like mid-level PS2 is a little bit more powerful than a Retroid Pocket 3, but it will struggle on things like God of War 2, for example. Whereas a Steam Deck plays every PS2 game without even blinking and can even play some PS3 games. So, really, it felt like the very, very small marginal improvement to Retroid Pocket 3's performance in terms of getting my G Cloud just really wasn't worth what's a relatively hefty price tag. The other thing worth mentioning is that as it's an Android device, and an Android device with the Play Store and everything else, it does mean that you can install Android apps on there, which is great. So I've got, of course, me being me, Streets of Rage 4 on there, and a few other things, Plants vs. Zombies 2, Battle Chasers, Final Fantasy, Ever Crisis, and a few other, random things like that, Android games. However, it only uses Android 11, meaning that a game like the one I've been showing you for the last couple of minutes, which is Devil May Cry Peak of Combat, this only runs on Android 13 and above. So actually, I can't install this on my G Cloud even though I want to. And there's no way I know of hacking the G Cloud to install new Android software, to upgrade it to Android 12, or in this case, what I need is Android 13. So that's really annoying. That is actually stuck on a surprisingly old version of Android. In some of the reviews by people like Retro Game Core, they also talk about how it uses a less than up to date Wi-Fi standard, or rather, it doesn't use the cutting edge Wi-Fi standard. I don't really know much about that or care much about that, but for a device that's meant to be a streaming device, that is pretty frustrating. What this boils down to is this: is that to be honest, I don't actually know what to use my G Cloud for. Um, Either I would use my Nintendo Switch, which is where I play stuff like Streets of Rage 4 and things like that, and all my many, many, many Nintendo Switch games. In the previous video, I think I showed you my list. It's like 280 Nintendo Switch games or something like that. So either I play my Nintendo Switch, or if I'm just going somewhere and I just want to throw a quick retro handheld in my pocket, the Retro Pocket 3, absolutely perfect, absolutely fine, and that runs everything up to and including past the PS1 and PSP, getting into PS2 era. And then if I'm actually going away on a holiday for like a little while where I want something a bit bigger, or I can afford to carry something a bit bigger and it won't be too much of a burden luggage wise, I take my Steam Deck, which can take me through all of PS2 and GameCube and Wii and Xbox, all the way into PS3. So I don't really know what I need the G Cloud for. It's a very slightly larger, very slightly more powerful Retroid Pocket 3 with a huge price increase and just a couple of liminal benefits like better ergonomics and the ability to play some Android games and things like that. So, unfortunately, I own this and I don't really have a use for it. And I haven't used it very much at all. I've used all my other handhelds way more than this. I don't want to sell it because I do have a soft spot for it. I really, really like it. But as I've basically not really got a use case for it, I've kind of gotten bored of it. And my tweaking of it, my refinement of it, my configuration of it, I kind of got halfway through and then I just put it on hold. I just got bored. I'm currently refining my Steam Deck builds, which I've talked about previously, and I'll be talking about over the next couple of episodes in a lot of detail. But I'm now refining those to basically find out exactly what PS2 games and GameCube games and Wii games that I really like. And I think what I'm going to do is on my G Cloud, I'm just going to have my absolute favorite games. I've got a half terabyte SD card in there, which again, in retrospect, maybe I should have got a bigger one. But the truth is, I'm just going to stick on there just the games that I like. So I think I've only got 9 Game Gear games on there, whereas on my Retroid, I've got about 100 or so. I've got maybe 50 Mega Drive games on there, whereas of course in my Retroid and in my ROM library, I've got about 300 or 400 Mega Drive games. So I think all I'm going to do is put my very favorite games on the G Cloud from PS2, from all these other things. I'm just going to put my absolute favorite stuff on the G Cloud just for the sake of it. I don't honestly know if that means that I'll develop a use case scenario for it, but right now I can't see a use for it. I've switched it off. I've got it somewhere else. I've put it on my shelf, and I'm just going to leave it until I'm ready to go back and configure it as kind of like a Thomas Judge's favorite ROMs handheld, rather than a retro handheld lower tiers or retro handheld upper tiers or different builds, that sort of thing. It really is just a mess about thing. So that's what I'm planning on doing with it. I guess the lesson out of this is don't just buy the handhelds because you get excited by them. Think about what you would use them for, when you would use them, what gaps your other retro handhelds that you might already have don't already fill. And don't just buy new handhelds for the sake of it, unless you want to obviously set up a YouTube review channel, which is not my intention and never was. Um, so yeah, please learn from my mistakes. Don't get sucked in by the hype. Don't get overexcited. And above all else, think through the use case scenario. Thanks for listening, everyone. I do really appreciate it. Please, obviously, like, comment, don't subscribe unless you are actually interested in comic-based content, because we're almost at the end of this series now. There's not going to be much more video game stuff on the channel. And as always, until next time, which in this case is going to be a video on my Steam Deck in a fair amount of detail. Until next time, do stay classy.